everybody. This is Tracy.
I'm Martina.
We're here again for another Natural Shore Book Club. This month we're doing the In Defense of Plants book by Matt Candeias. He is also the host of the In Defense of Plants podcast that you might be aware of, which actually just recently had our local favorite author Heather Holm on to talk about her book called Wasp, so I highly recommend that. We at Natural Shore really like that podcast. It's very into a lot of different interesting plants, so we were very excited when he came out with this book. It's called An Exploration into the Wonder of Plants, and I think that's a really good description because it has a lot of different stories about different plants all over the world, and just kind of his journey into discovering plants, getting passionate about plants, learning more about plants and how they interact with different things on the landscape. So it's a very exciting book if you really like his podcast, and I thought it was actually a really nice book to read. Yeah, it had really great illustrations and pictures in there. He talks about native plants in the North American area, but also throughout the world, so you get to learn a lot about stuff from different regions. I thought it was interesting that he talks a lot about some of our favorite like house plants and their actual origins, where they grow in the world, and the way they interact in the ecosystems where they're actually from. So I think that was really interesting. In my house, they just interact with my cat, but on the landscape, they do some pretty amazing things. So I thought that was really interesting.
Yeah, what I really liked about the book is his layout of the chapters. For example, he has the wild world of plant sex, plants on the move, fight for survival, dealing with aspects of reproduction and just how plants make their living on the landscape, how they fight for survival. What I also the book really inspired me, made me want to make my own project. I wanted to have a map of the world and just pin each spot where he mentioned a native plant, because he goes all over the world, and so many interesting plants that he described in this book.
Yeah, that was really cool. It makes you want to travel to those areas. I think we all have stories as plant enthusiasts of going to on different trips and finding plants that are super interesting, and then maybe looking it up when we get home and finding the intricate little stories about these plants. I think with his podcast in this book, his main goal is to cure plant blindness, where historically we used to be a lot more aware of the plants around us and could identify them, knew their uses, but also how they interact with different species on the landscape. And now today, with our busy lives, and just like the technology we have, we don't really know the basic plants that are outside on our landscape. So his goal is to really get people passionate about that, and he started with his story, how he got passionate, and it started with a class on ecological restoration, which I think is kind of familiar to a lot of us too, so I thought that was really interesting. He talks about his first job doing ecological restoration and kind of doing trial and error, finding stuff that works and doesn't work, and that really kind of resonated with us too. How sometimes you think something's going to work and then it doesn't, and just the process of ecological restoration and learning new things, and that being kind of something that drives your passion for plants too. So that was really interesting to me. He talks a lot about the Conner blue butterfly and its host species, wild lupin, and just kind of how it germinated better than he thought it would. Instead of just spreading the seeds on an open area, he thought that would be the best place for it to germinate because it didn't have to compete with others, but it actually germinated better with like other plants, grasses too. And I think that was an important lesson, where a lot of people want all flowers, but grasses really serve as kind of a nursery plant for some of that germination of other species. So interesting stories like that I thought was really great. yeah, like you said, it talks about plant sex, where it talks about pollinators and all the different pollinators that affect plants all over the world. He's got an interesting story about a lizard who pollinates a plant, so that was really cool.
Yeah, I would have never thought of that, but the things
Yeah.
you can realize when you observe it.
Right. No, and a specific bird that pollinates plants. So it's just, he ends it with really like how to get out. You know, he says something really interesting, like his advice to the reader is to put the book down, close the book, get
I loved
outside.
That, yep.
That was really great. So yeah, he's a great author as well as a podcast host. So I
Yeah.
learned a lot.
You can really, when you're reading it, you can sense his personality coming through. I
Mhm.
couldn't help but read the book in his voice.
Yeah. Yeah.
Just because it's so familiar to us, those who listen to his podcast. But
Oh yeah, no, I definitely read it in his voice too. He talks about the different issues facing plants, and then goes out to tell you how to fix those problems, which is a big one of them is just to take turf grass off your lawn and plant natives. So I really got behind his book. He tried not to make it too full of scientific jargon. He kind of wanted you to feel like you were there with him on his adventures, but he did kind of keep it in the scientific realm too, where he didn't want you to really
anthropomorph.
like attach feeling to the plants too, and kind of appreciate them how they are, which can be hard for me sometimes to not attach too much feeling to plants. But I thought it was a great book. Highly recommend.
Definitely an easy read. It's a page turner.
Yep. And has great stories. It makes me want to write a book about all my fun little plant adventures. So
Maybe look for that in the future.
maybe. We'll see. But yeah, I hope he writes another one. Listen to his podcast. Thanks for joining us today. Next month,
We have reptiles and amphibians of Minnesota.
yeah. So hopefully we'll see some of those pretty soon. Spring's here. So thanks for joining us, and go read the book.
See you next time.